There are a few more things we need to learn about classes, and so let's actually create a new class now. And as an example, we're going to use the bank account that we implemented before in the Bankings app. So let's say class account, and then as always we need the constructor method. And here each account should have the owner name, and it should have the defined currency, and also we want to pass in the pen. So let's say this dot owner is owner, and the same for currency and the pen. So we already know how to do all of this. And so now let's create a new account here. So let's say account 1, and so new account. So let's say that I'm the owner. So 10, then the currency is in the euro and the pen. So let's say that this one, and console log account 1. So indeed, we have the three values that we passed into the constructor now inside of the object. But now, what about the movements array and maybe also the local? So we want to start always with an empty array as the movements and the local we want to get from the navigator.language. So how should we do that? Should we add the new parameter like this? So movement, and then always pass an empty array and all the accounts that we create where that will work. So let's actually see that. So movements should be equal to movements here as well. And so now as you see, this movement is now this empty array. However, it doesn't make much sense to pass in this empty array into all the new accounts that we want to create. So we don't need this. And instead we can simply do this. And so this is something that we didn't do before, but of course we can create even more properties or any instance and properties that not are based on any input. And the same we can do for the local and set it to the navigator.language. And so now all of that appear here as well. And in fact, we can even execute any code here in this constructor that we want. So let's say, so thanks for opening an account and then owner. And so when Tensor opens a new account, then he's basically greeted with this message here coming right from the constructor. But now what about the deposits and the withdrawals? So basically what about our movements? Well, we could simply now go ahead and do this. So we can take account 1.movements, and then if we wanted to do a deposit, we could push a value into this. So let's say 220, and then when we want to withdraw something, we could simply push a negative value. And so if we then take a look at our account here, then of course we will see these movements right here in our array. However, it's not a good idea at all to do this. So instead of interacting a property like this, it's a lot better to create a methods that interact with these properties. And that is especially true for important properties, such as this movement here. So this will for sure avoid bugs in the future as your application grows. So let's now actually create a deposit and withdraw method here. So deposit and inherit the value that we want to deposit, and then this dot movements dot push the value that we pass into, and now the same for withdraw, so also a value. And so here we cannot actually call this method because it's actually gonna work basically the same way. So this dot deposit, and so as you can see here, we actually call other methods inside our starting method. So in withdraw we are calling this dot deposit, but of course we still need to use this keyword to be able to access this other method. And then here we pass and minus the value that we receive in this function. So let's try this now. So instead of doing this, we now can do it in a much nicer way. So account 1.deposit 220, account 1.withdraw 120. So indeed, our movements array looks just the same as before, but now we're actually using this public interface that we built here. So basically this method here are the interface to our objects, and then we also call this API. So again, let's actually write this here. So this is the public interface of our objects. And so this is a lot better than having to manually manipulate these properties outside the object as we did here. Also, this withdraw method here actually abstract the fact that a withdraw is basically a negative movement. So here, as we did it manually, we needed to pass a minus 120. But now as we do a withdraw, it of course a lot more natural to write that simply 120 are gonna be withdrawn. So what I'm trying to say is that this minus here is something that the user of this object shouldn't be carried about. And so now we actually abstracted that way right into this object, and in particular into this withdraw method. So just a very small abstraction here in this case, but still worth to notice. Now of course, still there's nothing stopping someone on our team from entering with the movements array directly and potentially making mistake and introducing bugs. So simply the fact that we have these methods doesn't make it impossible to still do this. And the same goes for example for the pen. So of course we can access the pen from the outside of the account. So you see, but probably it shouldn't be accessible from outside of the class. But of course, right now it is accessible. And this is actually very real and very important concern. So it's not just something theoretical I'm telling you here. And they say, of course, go for methods. So let's say we have a request low method here for some value, and remember that this was also a functionality of the bank's application. So we could make it approval of low based on some condition, and that condition could come from some other method. Let's say approval low, let's pass a value here as well, and this one we simply always return true. So I don't want to implement any complex logic here, but anyway, here we can call this dot approval low with the value, and so if the low is approved, this dot deposit of value, and we can log something to the console, so low approved or something like that. Now in the public interface, we basically only want this method here. So we want to be able to do this here. So account 1 dot request low, so let's say of 1,000. And so we see that the low was approved and it was pushed into our array. But of course we are also able to do this. So approved low, and so this of course doesn't do anything, but in the real world we should not even be allowed to access this kind of method. So this is kind of an internal method that only the request low method should be able to use. And so the reason why I'm telling you all this is basically just to justify that we really need data encapsulation and data privacy.